Good evening. It's Thursday and it's time for Call the Wild Outdoors Live. And we'll have a fishing report in a little while. And I hope everybody's been doing okay. Um, we're in for some good weather this weekend, so I hope everybody can get out. It's a holiday weekend. And I hope you youths are getting ready for deer hunting next weekend. You got your youth hunt coming up for the deer. Hey Maddie, how you doing? And tomorrow, last I knew, opens up the early goose season. I gotta work, so I won't be going. But hi, Mark. Okay, this is your last week to get your name in for the drawing for the free lure or the free trolling fly. Um, I had a lot of new subscribers this week, so I want to make sure they can get in on the drawing. Um, just send me an email to callthewildoutdoors1@gmail.com and you'll be automatically entered. Hi, Kirk. We got a weird fishing report coming up. I'm going to go ahead and give the Frankfurt report as I wrote it, and then I got an update that I received today, well, this morning. So, it's good news and bad news, and depending on what you like to fish for and how you like to fish. So, we've had some crazy weather out there. Hey, Pat. Yeah, Mary Beth dodged a bullet this week with the hurricane. I see Crystal River got smashed pretty good yesterday. All right, let's go ahead and get into the fishing report. Three pages again today. Okay, down in St. Joe, the guys are targeting the salmon in 75 to 120 feet of water. Most are fishing 35 to 65 foot down using spoons, plugs, flies, and meat rigs. They're using glow spoons and plugs early until just after it gets light. Well, sun up, I guess. And then they're switching over to chromes with blues and greens and oranges. And then they're catching some on flies and meat rigs. The flies are hooking up, using a lot of the green colored flies, some with glow in them. But the rotators that they're using are for the most part glow. They may be blue boards with glow tape, or the white Hoochie Mama boards with the glow crush tape on them. Those have been hot, and those are working the entire Lake Michigan shoreline. So kind of keep that in mind if you're going to drag flies or meat rigs. Finding the cooler temps was the key down there, guys. We've had some strange winds this week. We've had winds out of the north, and the next day blowing out of the south. And the lake temperature has been going up and down, up and down. Today it was 40 degrees outside of Frankfurt Harbor. Surface temps. So if you can find the temp, you're going to find the fish. And then with that weather, we had a lot of waves this week. So not a lot of guys were getting out all week, so the fishing reports are scattered. Now the success that they're having in St. Joe, it's considered very slow and limited success. Okay, South Haven, pretty much the same thing, but the salmon are being found in 90 to 120 feet of water using flies and meat rigs. I didn't get any reports of the plugs being used or any successes on them, but this time of year the plugs have got to start working. Excuse me here, I don't know what it's been the last 2 days. I've getting so many spam calls, it's ridiculous. But I mean, I had 25 of them today while I was at work. Anyways, in South Haven, the plug should start working. I if I was fishing down there, I'd be dragging a plug on a lead core, probably at least a 7 color, and with as warm as the water is, 10 color and up wouldn't be bad either. And then they're running some blues, chromes, and glows. Grand Haven, the weather has been an issue there too. But the guys are fishing in 40 to 80 feet of water using plugs and flies. The colors are glows and chromes. The chromes with the blue or the green seem to be hitting it good. Pier fishermen are catching a few just before light and then after dark, casting like Cleos, Castmasters, and any kind of casting spoon. I have no reports of guys floating eggs out there, but I'm sure that's going to work as well. Muskegon, the guys are fishing 60 to 150 feet of water, and they're fishing basically halfway down. So if they're in 60 feet, they're fishing 30 feet. If they're in 150, they're fishing 75. That seems to be what's working down there for them. But again, finding the bait fish and the temps are important. If you find the bait fish, you're going to find fish, even if the temps are wrong. I figured that out in Frankfurt last week. But the temps are scattered all over the place. And they're using glow spoons and plugs with some chromes added into the mix. It seems to be best, but it's still slow. Pentwater, when the guys can get out, they're targeting 60 to 130 feet of water. Varied depths. They're targeting the full range, trying to find fish, trying to find temperature. And I'm going to tell you, from the last 2 trips I've been out, there's 2 thermoclines out there. Been running 2 thermoclines out there. And what's working here, you troll a quarter mile, the temps are changing completely. So, it's just crazy. Steelhead out in Port Huron, huh? Nice. Spoons and challengers, okay. Alright, that's awesome. So we're catching steelhead off the boardwalk in Port Huron. So I'm assuming that's that whole public park there by the Blue Water Bridge all the way down to where the Bramble boat used to dock, or maybe still does. I haven't fished down there in quite a few years, but let's see. In Pentwater, the fishing's considered fair to good, but again, the temp is a key, and like same as the winds have really messed with the temp. Ludington, some guys are reporting great catches, some guys are reporting good catches, some guys are reporting no catches, but the vast amount are reporting good amounts of catches and fish. They're getting fish from the pier heads early, and then they're getting them to all the way out to 5 miles out later in the evenings, and then you reverse that. So troll around the pier heads late in the evening. So basically, if you start out in the morning, let's say you're fishing all day from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. 5 o'clock in the morning, you want to be trolling around the pier heads. As it starts getting light, you're moving out deeper and deeper and deeper. You got to troll out there all day, and then as it gets closer to dark, you're moving in closer, which that's pretty standard most places this time of year anyways, because the fish are coming in. They've been doing that to me since July. I've always been making my run straight up the chute into Frankfurt Harbor. I don't troll into the harbor, into the pier heads, but I get in that little channel that heading straight in. As soon as I hit 59 feet of water, my screen's been lighting up with fish just after dark. Let's see, in Ludington, they're catching them on spoons, flies, meat rigs, and J-plugs. Again, they're watching for the bait fish. That's where you want to run your presentations. And there's some guys jigging in Pere Marquette Lake. The success is varied. One boat will catch 2 or 3. Another boat won't even get a hit. So it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time, I guess. Manistee, again, the fishing remains good early. They're around the pier heads. Some guys are merely running 1 and 2 color lead cores. And I've heard of a few guys running flat lines with glows, greens, blues, and chromes, spoons, J-plugs, meats, and flies. It's all working. Pier fishing is producing after dark and before light. Again, success is varied at the piers. Onekama, guys are fishing a little north of Onekama Harbor in 80 to 150 feet of water. And they're running their lines 35 to 75 feet down. And they're getting decent catches of kings early in the morning. And then sunset until dark. J-plugs, meats and spoons, glows, greens, blues, and chromes are all working. Frankfort, this is my home port, so I've got a lot of news on Frankfort. But this was as wrote last night at 2 o'clock in the morning. The weather's been strange this week. In the early morning, guys are trolling around the pier heads with decent success. As it gets light, start moving deeper. Occasionally there have been 2 separate temperature breaks, one right around 34 feet, and then the water warms until you get to about 55 to 60 feet, and then it changes again and gets to that colder temperature. However, it's not seemed to matter to the fish. Guys are getting them 30 to 80 feet down on riggers, dipsies, and sideboards. J-plugs have been hot. Spoons and meat have also been working very well. Now, there's still a lot of steelhead around. I don't know how many of you watched the last video I put out, but we got another steelhead on a J-plug. I've never caught a steelhead on a J-plug in my life, and the last 2 times I've drug a J-plug out there, I've caught steelhead on it. That came on a 7 color, which is running approximately 35 feet down. The lure is going to take it down a little bit more, so it's between 35 and 40 feet. That was out of temperature. I'll tell you that right now where I was at. The temperature was running right around 60 feet that day, and then it warmed up at 75 until you got to about 110. And then it cooled off again. Alright, so let's see. Now, the guys dragging flies. One day they're working really, really good. The next day they're not. Sunday was the first time I've drugged that fly I made and didn't get a hit on it. So, yeah, I've talked to quite a few fishermen. I talked to a lot of guys that were fishing the Benzie Frenzy, some charter captains all through the week, and again, they're having about the same success on flies. One day they got to beat the fish off the fly. The next day, it's not getting touched. Meat rigs have been consistent, especially with the ballyhoo meat. So if you can find some ballyhoo meat, that seems to be the better of the meats right now, but that could change. This is getting some steelhead. A few coho and Lakers are also in the mix. Platte Bay is a little bit better for coho right now, but there were some coho out in front of the pier heads and stuff. Pier anglers are doing fair before dark until after, and then early mornings till it gets light. There's guys jigging in the lake. They were getting a few fish, but it's still slow. Now, Tuesday and Wednesday, the pier heads were on fire, morning and evening. One charter captain told me today it was record numbers of fish. But again, this is just the first wave of fish. We're still waiting the big one. Now, the news I got today is, unfortunately, all those fish went upriver last night. The bay cleaned out and the lake cleaned out. So now if you want fish, you got to get out to 250 to 350 feet of water and catch the 2 and 3 year olds while we wait for the next wave. Now this happens every year around Frankfort. We get that first run of fish in, and then there's a lull for a few days. We've got some 80 and 90 degree temps coming in this weekend. That's going to screw up the fishing even more. These poor fish, they don't know what they're doing. One day the surface temperature is 74 degrees, the next day it's 40. So it's really screwing things up. And then with the north winds and then the south winds, and then one day last week we had west winds. It's just got the water temperature doing such wacky things. And then we've got that current out there. That just got it all screwed up. But if you're river fishing or planning to come up river fishing, there's fish in the river right now. They're still getting a few salmon out front, out in the bank and stuff like that, but it's averaging 2 to 3 fish a trip right now, unless you go out deeper. Again, there's some coho out there. After coho right now, you want to get out to about 120 feet of water and fishing 35 to 45, 55 feet down. But the big kings that we had here, we had some really nice kings, they shot upriver. I was going to stop at the dam on my way home today, and I had something else I had to do, so I didn't have the time to do it. But chances are there's a few around Homestead Road Dam for you river fishermen. Should have a good weekend. Now, what I don't know, because I don't have anybody I know that actually fishes the Platte River right now, and I know they're not going to let any above that lower weir until sometime next week, maybe 2 weeks from now. They'll start letting a few fish pass. But if some shot up the river, they're going to go back and forth. But if you fish the river at night, and a lot of people, they'll park at the lower weir. Now you got to be like 300 feet away from the weir itself, and they've got signs marking it. But you can walk through the parking lot, and there's state land upriver, and that's actually a pretty good spot to fish. I'll warn you, if you're going to wade, that the fish are going to slam into you, and it don't tickle. Especially if they get the ankle bone. If you're turning sideways a little bit, maybe flicking a streamer or something, that can kind of hurt. But hopefully we'll get that big run of fish that we're expecting in sometime this week, or before the weekend would be nice. And the fishing will be good in the river and out in the lake. But again, if you want the 2 and 3 year old fish, which are nice chromers, real good eating fish, they're out there. You're not going to sit on them and troll 50 feet and have doubles and triples, but you're going to catch fish. Okay, we're going to move on now. Leland, fishing's been slow due to the weather. Like I said, we've had some horrible winds. Sunday, when I went out of Frankfort, I took the secretary's husband, her son, and a friend of her husband's out fishing. And Betsy Lake was rougher than Lake Michigan as far as feeling it in the boat. Now, we had some, 3-4 footers out there on the lake, but they were spaced kind of far apart, so it was more of like a cork riding the waves. Leland, they weren't going to be that lucky because the way the winds were blowing, they were going to be rough, and that's just the way it was. Saturday for the Benzie Frenzy was real rough in the morning. And unfortunately, there was an accident in Arcadia involving just one boat, but it sank with 5 people aboard. 4 were recovered. Rumors started out that it was a charter boat that went down. It was not a charter boat. It was a 20-foot pleasure boat. They were out for a ride. They were elderly people. And I know the charter captain that was the first one to respond. He was up fishing the tournament. He's actually a charter captain downstate. He charters on Gray Wolf Charters. And from what I understand, there was 3 charter boats that were all fishing the tournament. They all responded. and they got the 4 people out of the water. The boat that went down was still down, but it was under the water. I'm not sure how deep it was. The story I'm getting from a charter captain who talked to these other guys is one of the first mates, or one of the people aboard their boat, dove to save him, to try and grab a hold of him because they could see his arm, and they made him put a life vest on because the water temperatures were so cold that day, and he just couldn't quite get down to him. And when he came up for air, by the time he went back down, the boat was out of sight and sunk. Unfortunate to say, but the preliminary cause of the sinking, and I'm bringing this up because I've seen a lot online, and people are getting it wrong, but the preliminary cause was the transom was rotted, and it apparently had been tried to be fixed, and it was not fixed properly, and it came apart. And what I'm getting out of it is it went down, and it went down fast. So what I'm assuming happened is, because it was a younger person, 69, 79 years old, I don't remember the exact age, that was stuck in the boat, is I think the people had their life vest jammed up underneath probably the bow, and they were reaching for them. Now, I've gone down in a boat out down Lake St. Clair, and we got swamped by like a 35-foot boat that shut down about 5 to 10 feet off my transom and just threw a wall of water in the boat. It was a small boat, and the boat rolled. I did not have time to get life vests out of it. Anybody who's been in my boat knows that I keep 2 bags of life vests up underneath the bow. My bow is a sleeper, but those ain't the only life vests on the boat. There's also about 12 life vests laying loose that will float out if that boat goes down. And then up on my bridge, I got a breakaway seat that I made, and that's full of life vests too. So if that boat goes down, there's going to be life vests floating everywhere. And of course, I make kids wear them. So the biggest problem I'd ever face is if I got trapped in my cabin. But I usually undo one of the hooks for the vent, or the hatch underneath the bow, and that way if somebody was to get trapped down in there, they can just flip the one hatch. That'll open up. I've got flotation device on that hatch, so it'll automatically float open as soon as you release it. You can get out that way, or you can swim out through the door. And no matter what size boat you got, they're not invincible. So you always want to be prepared for worst case scenario. All right. Stay up to date with your flares. Stay up to date with your fire extinguishers. If you've ever had a fire on the boat, they're not fun. So, okay, enough of that. Like I said, Leland, the fishing's been slow due to the weather. The few that are getting out have caught some fish. They're fishing out to 200 feet of water, 65 feet down. Glows, greens, and chromes are the colors of choice. And they're trolling spoons and meat rigs. J-plugs are also pulling their share of fish. But probably because of the depth, they're not running a lot of J-plugs. Traverse Bay this week. Remember I said last week that I knew them fish were going to be in there, and you could probably catch them by the Boardman River. That happened. They're fishing throughout the bay, including the mouth of the Boardman River. Glows, greens, blues, chromes, and whites are the ticket. J-plugs are working good, meat rigs and flies, and of course spoons. So they're all taking a share of the catch. So if you want to fish Traverse Bay, the fish are in. As a rule of thumb, Traverse Bay don't, unless the wind's coming out of the north, which it's been doing a lot, but even when it's coming out of the north, it don't get super rough there, but the waves that it does get can make the boat bounce around so much because they are closer together. That sometimes it's actually more comfortable to fish the bigger lake. All right, Charlevoix. Guys are getting out. The guys that are getting out are targeting 75 to 150 feet of water, and they're fishing 60 to 80 feet down with some success. Spoons and plugs, chromes and purples, watermelons, and they're using dipsies with flies and meat rigs. So they're hooking up with all that stuff. Petoskey, fishing 60 to 175 feet of water, 30 to 90 feet down, is productive. Spoons, plugs, meat, and flies in greens and blues. So they're running the flies in the greens and blues. So the spoons and the plugs are using a lot of glows and chromes. Sheboygan. Alright, Sheboygan, they're a little different. The guys are getting a few fish trolling in the river. Basically, from what I'm gathering, they're into their run. This is what they're expecting. For some reason, it's one of the first places to get a run year after year after year, and all the guys are telling me they're in their run. So there's only a little bit of time left for that, but they're trolling the river. They are still getting some out on the lake, but they're only trolling out to about 90 feet of water, and then they're turning around and coming back in. They're losing the fish at 50 feet of water, I guess. Now, the shore fishermen are also catching a few fish, casting very early and very late. There's a few fish up by the dam. You can fish at the dam and you can watch them go up that fish ladder. I believe fishing is still open there. It's been about 8 years since I fished up there. I didn't make it this year, like I wanted to stop there on my way back, because I usually do good for walleye right there casting from shore. Let's see, the trolling out on the big water, that's limited success with plugs, spoons, flies, and meats. Chromes, glows, and whites are the colors. So Presqu'île, weather is scattered to fish. I'm being told to try 80 to 130 feet of water, 35 to 75 feet down, using spoons, plugs, flies, and glows and chromes, and then they're getting some on oranges. Now, I would definitely be trolling oranges over in that area anyways for the Atlantics. They're a lot like coho. They seem to really like them orange colors. So it's funny, the Lake Huron side, they seem to catch more fish on the oranges this time of year. So Rogers City, report I got, fish are staging in Rogers City. They're trolling in the bay and out to 100 feet of water using spoons, plugs, flies, and squids. And then meat's working a little bit, but it's not one of the hotter baits. And they're using glows, oranges, blacks, and chromes. Alpena, they're fishing all over the bay, targeting fish in 20 to 60 feet of water. 10 to 35 down, so they're up high. Spoons in chromes, glows, and greens, and then blues. Flies and meat rigs are also taking a few fish as well. They're also getting a few bonus walleye. The walleye are being caught in the 40 to 55 feet range. But they're mostly catching them on crankbaits, but a few of the salmon fishermen are catching them on their spoons. And then there are a few fish in the Thunder Bay River to the dam. The salmon I'm talking about now in the Thunder Bay River. Best luck is, again, just like on Lake Michigan side, very, very early in the morning, and then again after dark and all through the night. Skoda. And I said this last week that I knew them fish were out there, and they're getting a few, but it's the weather has been rough. A few guys have gotten out, and they are catching some fish. Spoons, plugs, and flies, 35 to 100 feet of water, 25 to 70 feet down. And then a few kings have been caught off the pier late at night there and early in the morning. I'm going to tell you right now, the guys are keeping it kind of hush-hush. But the fish are there. They should be going up the river. Guys should start seeing them in the river here within the next week and a half, depending on the winds. and then they'll be trolling outside of the Sawa River for the next probably 3 weeks. Talus, basically rotten weather's kept a lot of guys off the water, but there are a few walleye still being caught. But it's nothing like it was. Best thing to use there is harnesses, orange blade, black beads, blue beads, silver blades. So, and I got no report from Augrey, and I do know that the fishing, even though I don't got a report, I did some research. Saginaw Bay has been slow. It's been slow for walleye, been slow for perch. With the holiday weekend, there's going to be enough people out. It might stir them fish up, get them into the biting mood. Excuse me. So we'll have to see how that goes. All right, cruising on up to the Upper Peninsula, Little Bay Denok. The fishing is way slowed down for the walleye and the perch both. They're getting a few walleye on harnesses, and then the perch are biting on shiner minnows. But you're gonna be trolling for them fish. You're gonna be looking for them. Now, Big Bay Denok. Okay, perch fishing is finally picked up there. They're using minnows, and they're targeting 40 feet of water and deeper, and I guess they're getting some really nice perch. So, Marquette, they're getting a few kings and cohos, 30 to 90 feet of water, or 35 to 90 feet of water. Lake trout are deeper, 80 to 200 feet of water. Most of the guys are targeting the lake trout. I don't blame them. They got, if you've ever been up to the UP, they got what they call the skinnies and the fats. And the skinnies are the Mackinac strain of lake trout, and the fats are what we normally catch out here in Lake Michigan. Distinct taste differences. Never cook them up together. Now, the inland lake here by me, Crystal Lake, the lake trout in there are far superior to the lake trout out in Lake Michigan, and what they have in Crystal Lake is a Mackinac strain. There are a few Mackinac strain out in Lake Michigan, and I'll take a lake trout out of Lake Superior, especially one of the skinnies, and I'll give you 100 salmon for that. They're that good. So I can see why they want to target those lake trout. But again, they're getting them. The salmon are coming on the flies and spoons and glows, greens and oranges. Lake trout, they're trolling spinning glows and small spoons, and they're bouncing them off the bottom, and they're also suspending them 15 to 20 feet off the bottom. And then there's a few guys that are jigging them when weather's permitting. The rest of the St. Mary's River, a few salmon are being found by the Sioux Locks, or Sault Ste. Marie, excuse me. And then Detour, they're getting a few walleye as well in these areas, but the walleye have slowed way down. Probably there's a lot more salmon in there, and salmon tend to spook the walleye in the rivers. Probably because the salmon, once they enter river system, even a river the size of St. Mary's, they get a little on the aggressive side, and they probably chase a lot of them walleye right out of there. But they are getting a few, and I do know they are catching some Atlantics in the St. Mary's River, and they're getting some pinks. So pinks are like a bonus fish, because you're allowed a lot of those in the St. Mary's River. The rest of the UP, as it was said before, they're still playing with the bears. So my reports are weak because of the guys playing with bears. So, and they're getting pretty geeked up. Just like I'm sure there's a lot of people getting geeked up for the early goose hunt. There's a lot of geese out there right now, and then I guess they're running the youth hunt really early this week. That's going to be, or this year, that's going to be next week. And then the week after that, I guess, is a special doe season. So, people are starting to swing over into hunting. If you're going to be bow hunting, now's the time to get out, take a few shots, put it back in the house, go out the next day, take a few shots, start building up your arms. And just remember, when you're bow hunting, it's not the guy that can pull the most weight that gets all the deer. It's the guy who can sit at full draw when that deer's looking at him and hold it forever without starting to shake. And then when the deer looks away, be able to get the shot. And from my own experience, I can shoot a 70-pound bow. I have no problem drawing it back. I might not be able to now with my shoulder, but no problem pulling it back. But I can't hold a 70-pound bow for very long. Now my Martin Cougar Glass Mag, that drops off 50%. And when I have it set at 65 pounds, I can hold it for about 2 minutes. And then I start to get that shake. I dropped it to 63 pounds. I can hold that thing for hours at full draw. 2 pounds makes all the difference in the world. So if you start shaking, and you want to practice that, because sometimes deer will pick up that movement and they'll turn and look. They can't see you, but they'll be staring right at you, trying to get you to move. They know there's something different there, and you got to wait them out, because you don't want to shoot at them when they're looking at you. I'm not going to say they're going to duck the arrow, but it can definitely cause a bad hit where you'll be chasing them around all week looking for them and never get them. But get to the point where you can hold that bow back for quite a while if you're a bow hunter. All right. And our fishing tip of the week is, the reason I brought up the hunt is it kind of goes along with our fishing tip. The bottles of scent killer that they have. Keep a bottle of that in with your fishing gear, either in your tackle box or in your boat. Especially in the boat, you know, if you're running in a little boat or even a big boat and you got to play with the outboard fuel system, like plug it in or something, you get a little bit of gas on you. Now you may smell it, you may not yourself, but the fish are going to smell it, and then you're touching your lures. So what you do, even pulling the rope, you're going to get grease. There's grease on there, and that smell will get on your hands, and that can turn the fish off. So you spray your hands down with scent killer after you're done playing with your motor. Wipe it around, let it dry a few seconds, then start handling your fishing equipment. It actually helps. So kind of it could be the difference between filling the box and nothing in the box, depending on how finicky the fish are that day. That's our fishing report. So I would assume, even though I got no report of it, that the fish are up the Manistee River. And I would also assume that they're probably in the Pere Marquette as well. They're been pretty much getting the same weather as us, so I'm sure some fish went up. But again, all three of us ports are waiting for that main run of fish that should come anytime now. There's always that first run, catch a lot of fish. Everybody thinks it's the main run, and it never is. So we're still couple weeks away from the main run. We just got the early birds right now. So sturgeon in the North Channel. Okay. Yeah, I think I seen a post that they caught a double down there. Yeah, and thanks, Pat. Yeah, smash the like button. It does help out my channel. It shows up in searches to people, especially with my low subscriber numbers right now. Likes actually really help it out a lot. Yeah, how'd they do, Mark? I never got a report that they were catching anything in Lake Manistee. I knew they were jigging, but I never heard if they caught anything. I know a couple of charter captains I talked to today, they said that, you know, Betsy Lake had a bunch of fish in it the last few days, and today there was nothing. They were catching, seeing if you netted. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, so I didn't include that in my fishing report, but Um, if people ask, I can kind of mention that yeah, they were seen catching a few in the lake jigging. So. So is everybody staying home this weekend, or there's some people getting out and camping, fishing, and whatnot? Now, next week I'm going to talk a little bit about winterizing boats. I've been winterizing a lot the last 2 weeks, and it's surprising the amount of guys I talk to at work that bring their boats in, and think it's a much harder process than it really is. Okay. We used to do good. Man, I must have been about 18, 19, yeah, about 18 or 19 years old, and we used to go up there, and um, we were fishing inside a little boat basin, and we were getting salmon in there. They'd come in at night. Where I like fishing when I get into that area, though, is Whiskey Harbor down by Port Hope. I like playing with them channel cat. There's a lot of guys that catch smallmouth in there too, but I really like playing with the channel cat. I used to park in the parking lot and wade out to the point. It was back in my younger days when we were stupid. We'd carry all our equipment out, walking through the colder water, and then we'd come back and gather up some firewood, and we'd wade that out there, keeping it dry, and we'd have a little bonfire out there on that little point, catching channel cat. Good old days. The last year I fished it, I got smart. I had a 12-foot aluminum boat, and I took that out with an electric motor, and I only chipped one of the blades on the big rocks that are in there. Yeah, you're supposed to have a lot of wind there. I know today would have been the day for me to go fishing. Tomorrow we're supposed to have 4 to 6 footers out where I'm at. Of course, they've predicted them before, and they don't happen. So if we don't have 4 to 6 foot waves, I might fish tomorrow evening. I didn't even watch the weather for the rest of the weekend, I should say, other than I know it's gonna be hot. But you're over by Oscoda, ain't you, Doe Hunter? So you might actually do some good over there too. I know, remembering from my younger days, it was just a matter of days from when they were starting to catch them on the pier until they were also catching them all the way up to Foot Dam. Them fish run that river a lot like they do in the Platte River, in and out, in and out. But I remember I don't know if they still do or not, they used to have a big run of fish that went up the Tawas River too. I can remember when I was about 12 years old, I think, I got my parents to drop me off there, and I was catching salmon right off the shore, right there out in, there's like a public access area there, a couple 100 yards away from the mouth of the river. I'd fish along that, and they were jumping everywhere, and I was hooking a few. I never landed one, but I fought them out quite a bit. That'd have been probably the fourth or fifth salmon run ever in Michigan. I'm aging myself now. Well, thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it. I try and I don't rely on just bait shops. I also try to rely on fishermen when I can get a hold of them. Unfortunately, all my fishing friends that I have up in the UP, which isn't a lot because I don't get up there like I used to, but they're playing with bears right now, and that's how they put it to me, playing with bears. Like, some guys they're running them with dogs, and um, they're getting ready for the bear hunt. And one of my friends that's getting ready for bear hunt, he's actually guiding up there. I know he's already booked solid. He ain't got a hunt left, but um, he talks with a real heavy UP accent, and he just always tells me they always catch the fish up there because the fish are always biting. It's the UP, and the way he says the UP, it's oopy. So I always laugh when he's talking. He's like, oh, you always laugh, but you're the one with the accent. Okay, 2+ hours in a big lake. Elsie. Okay, yeah. And I can understand liking the Oscoda area. I spent so much time there as a kid that it's like my second home. It was a lot better when the fire trails on the road that goes out to Foot Dam, when those were still timbered in there before they cut it all down. We used to camp out in there and everything else, but they cut all that stuff down. No, I've never been out to Yankee Reef from Harbor Beach. Um, the only big boat fishing that I've done north of Port Sanilac would have been out of Port Austin. I used to boat hunt a few miles out of Bad Axe all the time too when I was a teenager. I had some close friends of mine that had 80 acres with the Pinbog River running right through it, and basically I could use their cabin and hunt there anytime I wanted to. Um, Loved it. There was so many deer there. And then one year, I guess I was about 22 or 23 at the time. The property that butts up to my buddy's property, some farmer had it, literally hundreds and hundreds of acres. And he passed away and donated it to the state. And they sat on it until 3 days before the shotgun season opened up, and opened it up as state game area. And I went in there bow hunting. It was December 1st. And I kid you not, I came across at least 50 dead does that were in there. Most of them, were dropped on the spot. They weren't getaways where, they took the hit and ran away because their shoulders were just blown out with slugs. Everybody was just shooting first and then looking to see if it was legal afterward, and it just made me sick. And the following fall, the bow hunting on my friend's property wasn't nothing. I used to see 10 deer walking out to my stand, and it didn't matter what time I went out to my stand during the day. I wouldn't be in the stand more than 10 or 15 minutes before a deer would walk by. The problem is I could hit a squirrel at 30 yards with my bow, no problem. I had a really cheap bow at the time, and I could shoot it right-handed, or I could flip it over for the other side of the tree and shoot left-handed, which I was proficient at. It didn't have sights on it. It just had like thumbtacks in it for sights. Is an Indian archery bow. One of them ones it's just solid cable. You can't replace the string or anything. And what I didn't realize is target shooting it was fine, but as soon as it got a little bit cold, it started slinging arrows all over the place because the limbs got warped on it, and I didn't realize I was stupid kid at the time. But anyways, I could hit a squirrel at 30 yards, and I kid you not, the one day these two squirrels were running around, chattering, chasing each other, and just ticking me off. And I had two of my friends with me, and I just drew back and oh, stop, you little sucker, and you're gonna be my lunch. Well, it stopped and stood up, almost like it was taunting me. even though it was 30 yards away. I stuck an arrow right through that thing. Had it for lunch. But I went down, grabbed my squirrel, grabbed my arrow. I'm sitting up in the stand, and it was a stand that was out in the woods. It was 6 feet off the ground. Sharpening up my broadhead. And I look, here comes two doe walking the same path them squirrels had come in on. And the one big doe stopped, literally, right where I hit that squirrel, and was sniffing the blood. I missed her twice. I mean, and that's when it finally dawned on me. I was aiming at the whole deer instead of picking the spot where when I was shooting at the squirrels, I was aiming for the shoulders. So, and I haven't missed a deer since. But that was also, I bought a new bow 2 years later, and I didn't get to hunt the next fall because of my job that I had. So I never hunted that. Well, I did hunt it once with my good bow, but just never tagged a deer there. And I'm going to tell you, the guys fishing the Benzie Frenzy last weekend because of the weather. I talked to quite a few of them just after weigh-in on Saturday, and most of the guys only brought in 4 fish. And then Sunday, it was a little better, but a lot of guys only brought in 4 or 5 fish, and I thought, well, I'm still taking these guys out fishing, and we put 6 in the boat. I was really tickled. And a bunch of boats went out that evening from my home port, and there was only 3 of us that used the fish cleaning house. There was me, the guy who was in the boat next to me, and one of the charter captains that I know from Chrome Seekers Charters. We were the only 3 that used the fish cleaning house. And I stood there flapping my jaw for a long time. I was the last guy to clean my fish. And so it was actually rough fishing, but I got lucky and found the fish. So we actually had a good night, and then we caught a beautiful female steelhead. I couldn't believe the colors that she had when she first come in the boat, and the camera did not pick up on them. But we ended up with 6 fish for 7 releases, and again, I was really happy about that. We were only out a few hours, so. I would think Lake Erie right now would be doing pretty good for perch, if anybody's going to be down that way, especially right along what is it, Grosse Ile in the river there. There's that little bay. They should be getting some nice perch in there right about now. But I've got no reports from down there. I grew up down there, and I ain't got anybody that fishes down there anymore that I know. And I do know that a couple of the bait shops there in St. Clair Shores, though, I got no way of looking up that information without using the internet, but they usually have a phone number you can call for a fishing report, and they update it usually daily. So if you're going to be down in that area. And then from what I know, if you're fishing Lake St. Clair, you should be able to go straight out from 11 Mile Road, and you're going to get out into about 15 feet of water and start trolling toward 13 Mile, or the spillway some people know it as, and you should be able to pick up walleye in there using some crawler harnesses, or I believe it's number 7 flatfish, the little ones. They're yay big with a single treble hook on them, and you fish those basically just like you do a crawler harness. You make yourself a leader with a double swivel on it, It's about 36 inches long. You put that little flatfish on there, a little piece of worm, and you troll it right, same speed, right with your crawler harnesses. You have one rod with a crawler harness, 1 yard with that one rod with that flatfish, and it does start filling up the cooler real fast that way. And in about another 2 to 3 weeks, I'll be catching them off the piers when they can get out there, casting floating Rapellas, pencil plugs, basically anything that floats that's a minnow imitation, and retrieving it ungodly, annoyingly slow. I mean, almost if you're listening to a clicker, it's gonna be click, 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 and you just want that thing to just kind of quiver on the top. And what it's imitating is all those little mini 1.5 inch long gizzard shad that are swimming along the surface after dark, and then walleye just come in and gorge themselves on them. That was from mid-September to about mid-October. It was the times me and my buddies as kids could go down and get a limit of fish each of walleye in just a couple of hours, without a boat, just fishing from shore. And you can have a night crawler down there at the same time and it won't get touched. All them fish are right up by the surface. Alright, well, it seems things have slowed down a lot in chat, so smash that like button if you enjoyed the report and the chat. And I said next week we'll cover a little bit about boat winterization, getting ready to store them and whatnot. I'm going to be pulling my boat the end of September. If anybody is going to be up in the Frankfurt area, hang on just a second. I'm gonna check the weather forecast. Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow 2 to 3 foot waves. Friday evening 2 to 4. Saturday 2 to 4. That's actually fishable. If anybody's gonna be up here and really wants to get out, just let me know. I'll get you out there. Hey, not a problem. Just get a hold of me, Thomas. And next year I'll probably be running my bigger boat, so it'll be a lot more comfortable too. I know Pat's fished on my boat with me, and but it was a super rough day that day, and the weather just sucked, and I wasn't able to put any fish in the cooler for him. I think we had one or two releases was all. It was just a lousy day, so hoping I can take him out and redeem myself. And then Mary Beth, or Maddie as I call her, she's been out with me quite a few times. But she lives in Florida, so she don't get to go out a lot. And she's caught fish with me before. I don't always catch fish, but usually. So. Last 2 weeks in August, yeah, that'd be good fishing. Just get a hold of me. I'll get you out there. It's not a problem. I'm always looking for somebody to go out fishing. But anyways, as I was saying, I'm going to be pulling my boat probably the end of the month, and I'll actually videotape the winterizing of that. That one is a little trickier to winterize than most boats, just because it's older, but to me it's still pretty easy, and I'll show you some tips and tricks that you can use on your own boats, because there's really nothing to it. If you've never winterized the boat yourself, there's really nothing to it. The only thing I highly recommend is when you put antifreeze in the engine, never use the green antifreeze for one thing. Use the blue RV antifreeze that's 100 degree below zero. The blue stuff actually will mix with water, just like regular automotive antifreeze. And there's a lot of guys, and I had one boat today, I spent 45 minutes cleaning sand out of his exhaust manifolds. It was so plugged up. He goes out to the sandbar, obviously, and he keeps his drive down and gets all kinds of sand in there. But boats that get sand trapped in them, if they're not careful, that'll turn to like a little cement in there. And if you get a little bump, it can trap some water in an area, and that can freeze and cause you problems. Well, if you use the blue RV antifreeze, when you add it in there, it'll mix with that water, it won't freeze. And that's why I always recommend the blue antifreeze. The pink will not mix with water, and the pink will actually turn to a jelly-like substance when it gets cold. It technically don't freeze, but by turning to jelly and stuff, it can still cause unusual pressures, which can weaken head gaskets, exhaust manifold gaskets. If you get a little bit of it trapped on a flapper on an IO, it can dislodge it and cause it to fall out of place. When you're pouring it back down in through your water pump impeller to protect that, it can trap inside of there and bend your impeller out of place. So the blue stuff will not do that. It's a little bit more money, but peace of mind is excellent. Marine engines, the exhaust manifolds, lower units, ain't a bit of it that's cheap. And other than draining your engine and putting a little antifreeze in it, the next most important thing is to drain the lower unit lube and refill it with proper lube. Do not leave it empty. The old outboards from the 50s, the old timers, they used to just drain them and leave them empty, and it never hurt a thing. But they had really sloppy tolerances. Nowadays, everything is built a lot tighter. If you leave it without lube in it, just a sunny day can cause condensation. It's going to cause your bearings to rust up, and then when you start it in the spring, peels a little bit, your tight tolerances are gone, and you're looking at an expensive repair. So always fill that back up with lube. Do not leave them empty. And the reason you want to drain those is water can get trapped in there. Seals leak. You do not want water in your gear case. I recommend using the Mercury High Performance Gear Lube at all times, but especially if you know you have a little leak. One, it'll change color when it's mixed with water. It's kind of a green color, and it'll come out a gray color. But the other thing is if you have a small water leak in there, say a shift shaft seal, where you get maybe an ounce of water in there. Yeah, you want to drain that oil in the fall, but the Mercury High Performance Gear Lube does not lose its lubrication value when water's added to it. It still lubricates. Where some of the high-poid oils, like the 90 weights and stuff like that, they don't mix with the water, and they have no lubrication value whatsoever when water's added to them. So something to think about. It's a little bit more expensive than the regular gear oil, but so worth it. And then if you've got a freshwater system on your boat, you gotta drain your holding tank, your freshwater holding tank. And a lot of guys are pouring the pink antifreeze in there. You don't need to do that. One, if you've got an inch of water in that holding tank, Yamalube's a good oil, but you don't want to use it in your gear case. You want to use a gear oil for your gear case. Anyways, don't pour the antifreeze inside your holding tank. It's next to impossible to get that out, and your water will taste really sweet, and it'll have a stench to it in the spring. To get water through, or to get the pink antifreeze, because you're going to use the pink on your freshwater system. I've never used the blue. I'm sure you probably can, but it's listed as toxic, but it's not toxic. But anyways, what you do is you disconnect the hose from your holding tank, or if you can't do that, some holding tanks are hidden, but you can get to the pump, take the hose off at the pump that comes from the tank, just leave it loose. You don't need to plug it back in until spring. Make another hose that'll go in there, drop that end inside your pink antifreeze, turn it on until you get pink through all your water system. Don't forget the toilet. If the toilet runs off the freshwater system, to pump that through, because you can do the same thing with your camper. Everything's got to be pink. Hot water, cold water, and always start with the farthest sink away if you're in a camper. And don't forget the shower. You want to make sure you do that. And the reason you want to do both is you don't want any water trapped in there. Once you get pink to the hot water side and the cold water side, turn them both on for a second, because sometimes water gets trapped in between them. If you turn them both on for just a second while you got that plugged on, that gets all the water out of it. Then shut it down, just leave it in there. You're done with that. And then in the spring, when you hook back up to fresh water, you don't have to sit and flush it 50 times. You just hook it up, run until you get water out, you're good. Because you didn't put none in your holding tank. And always flush a little bit of the antifreeze through the toilet into the sewage tank, because you can never get all of that out of there, and you don't want that freezing and cracking, because with solids will get trapped in there, and that can cause the tank to crack. So just something to think about. Use an extra gallon of antifreeze probably that way, but actually no, I think I saved a couple gallons the way I do my camper and my boat. So it just depends on how much you normally pour into your tank, and you don't need to do that, and then you don't have to deal with flushing it out. And I do recommend that everybody change the oil in their IOs if they've been running it. Some places say you don't have to, but just keep in mind, if you've got a few hours on that oil, it's got contaminants in it from combustion, and those contaminants can be corrosive. Some of the engines anymore, the IOs, they've got like a lean burn system to them. You do not fog those. But other engines that don't have a lean burn system on them, you fog them. And it always helps to fog them. And make sure you stabilize your fuel. If you know that you're putting your boat up, let's say Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, pour some stabilizer in it for the weekend on your last tank of gas and drive around on it, and it gets mixed up really good. And there's always going to be some in the carburetor and or the injector system when you're done. And I highly recommend the Blue Startron stabilizer that they have out there now. Mixes with the alcohols that are in fuels and stuff like that, and we've had real good success with it. Yeah, Dull Hunter, there's actually hi Michael. There's actually 3 oils that I recommend for the 2 strokes. That would be the Mercury or Quicksilver 2-stroke oil, the OMC 2-stroke oil, or Yamalube. I've got 30 years in the marine industry, and I used to rebuild a lot of motors at the one shop I worked at. And I could tell you right off the get-go on a 2-stroke which one was running Valvoline, Pennzoil, or Mercury Quicksilver. It's night and day difference. I just highly recommend the Mercury. You pay 50 cents or $1 more a quart, but it's so worth it. And I used to run a lot of old outboards. I mean, I was running outboards out of the 40s for a few years and always ran Mercury Quicksilver or OMC oil in it. Never had a problem. While we're on the winterizing thing, always disconnect your batteries when you're done for the year. You don't have to bring them in the house or anything like that, but just disconnect them. If you leave them connected, they will be dead in the spring. I can promise you that. Okay, we're going to call it a night right here. I see the counts dropping, and I think people are getting a little bored. So everybody have a good weekend. If you're getting out fishing, good luck, tight lines, and stay safe out there. And we'll see you next week. Good night.